Hey everyone, it's Peter from Rock Daydream Nation, and I've got a special guest back to the channel, Doug Aldrich. How are you, Doug?
I'm good, Peter. How are you, man? Thanks for having me
Good,
on.
good. Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. Look, mate, first and foremost, a lot of our viewers would like to know, how are you? You were diagnosed with throat cancer last year and underwent surgery. Is everything clear? Everything's okay?
Yeah, everything's good now. It's so weird to even hear that because it seems like it wasn't even real. But
Yeah.
I'm good. I got my blood done about 2 or 3 months ago, and it came back perfect. So that was good. And they do a full scan, and so far everything's good. I got to stay on it
Yep.
obviously, but yeah, it was just they it's just one of those things. It's a STD kind of cancer that you get. Usually, a male gets it in the mouth,
Hmm.
tonsils. I got it on my throat and my tonsil, and so anyway, but it's all good now, and you know, thanks to God.
Absolutely. Do you often reflect now that you were lucky to catch it like early?
Yeah, I actually did catch it as early as I should have because basically, if I had been, I've got kids that are in school, and I'd make sure that they go to the dentist. They got their one kid's got or had braces at the time, and the
Yep.
other, my daughter's young. So I was like, I don't have dental insurance. So I was like, I'm just gonna send them to the dentist. I don't need to go. But had I gone to the dentist, they would have seen it. And
Yep.
so when I did catch it, it had already gone into my lymph nodes right in here.
Oh, okay.
I was shaving one day, and uh got I was freaked out because I saw a bump, and then after tests and all that stuff, the doctor said, we got to do a biopsy, and then it came back positive for HPV-16 cancer, and
Mm,
and then it was just like, okay, what does that even mean? I don't even, it was like it was just surreal, it
yep.
basically, I think it was about a year ago that I discovered it, and then it wasn't until September actually that I got surgery. But
Mm,
everything's good, man. I recovered from the surgery. I'm still recovering from the radiation. You know, um, it's it kind of kicks your ass, radiation, but it does
yep.
kill everything. So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're well and you sort of got over that hurdle and you're back in the Dead Daisies fold. And
yeah, man.
let's talk about the album. So you've got a new album coming out, Looking for Trouble, at the end of May. Now, when we spoke last time, you did drop some hints that there was a blues album that was in the works. And lo and behold, the John Lee Hooker song "Boom Boom" has come out, and it's a real kicker of a song. Was this a
Yeah,
fun project for you to do?
this project this came together pretty unknowingly. It was like a bonus for us because we weren't planning to do anything like this, and we had the opportunity to go down to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, to write. We were basically gonna write songs for the last rock album, which Light 'Em Up, and we wanted to. It's one thing that's great about the Daisies, is that we do everything together, and so we wanted to go somewhere fresh, different, scenery in a different place, and we management got us booked into the Fame Studios, and it's got such a great history and all this stuff. So we had a great writing session there, but we also had some time to dabble in this other stuff, which we kind of stumbled onto it. We were we were basically writing, and every day they would have, this studio's got so much history, they'd have a tour come in, and they would do like you know they talk about the history of the studio, the artists that had been there, like Etta James and uh, um, the Dwayne Allman and Steven Tyler, and Aretha Franklin was one of the big ones that they would talk about, and Wilson Pickett. So we'd take a break during those tours and just go in the control room. And usually it happened around dinner time, and we'd have a glass of wine or whatever, just chill out and start talking about the history, listening. We listened to the tour, and it was so inspiring. It was like, man, this is right where it all was happening. All this blues music from, and then one thing led to another, and we started jamming on a couple things. And we had Sarah Tomac with us on drums. We were, like I said, we were there to write, and we didn't have our Tommy Clefetos was busy, and we just went in there with her, and then she's like a blues aficionado. She's great. She could play. We're talking about, Sweet Home Chicago, and she's like, okay, do you, or some other song. She's like, well, what kind of groove do you want? Do you want it to be a Chicago, or you want it to be a Chicago blues groove, or a Texas shuffle, or what are you looking for? So she knew everything, and we could just have our way with these songs and kind of put our own stamp on them.
I tell you what, Karabi's voice is made for the blues. I think it's inevitable that this would have happened sometime down the track, one way or the other, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm super glad that we did it together with John instead of him doing it on his own.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I was thinking of, like when you were in Whitesnake, I was always secretly hoping that a project like this would eventuate with DC, but it never happened. Did you ever bring something like this to the table? Hey, Dave, can we do a blues album?
Well, if I had said Dave and asked him,
he hates Dave. David. Okay.
Yeah, he would have said no fucking way, man.
Yeah, but I know he hates being called Dave.
No,
David.
we talked about, we listened to a lot of blues. We talked about it. I was trying to kind of bring back a little bit of the blues side to his, the biggest years were obviously the 80s, and but in the late 70s, early 80s, Whitesnake was more of a blues-based band, and yes. So it would have been really natural to do. But no, we were just busy, creating new music, and then right at the time when I was going through a split up in a relationship, and I needed to get home and be with my son and take over, so my ex could do her thing, and that's when David was talking about doing the purple thing. We worked on it a little bit, but I wasn't super, it wasn't like that was not, if it had been a full-on blues record, it would have been like, oh man, I got to make this happen, but I stepped away. But yeah, David he's got, like John, the perfect voice for blues. Yes. David's just, his voice is just sick,
Yeah. I think I heard a clip of him and Bernie Marsden do an acoustic version of Trouble. And David brings out the voice, and I'm thinking, that's the Whitesnake that I wanted to hear. And, when you were laying down albums, it was sort of going in that direction. And I'm just thinking, I reckon an album or two down the track, if you were still in the band, it would have been likely that he would have laid maybe a blues cover album or something.
Yeah, maybe he still will. Who knows? But but you're right. In fact, I was part of that recording that he did with Bernie. They sent me the stuff to do a little bit of work great. On that. I always told David, I go, man, that low voice is the shit, man. Yeah. That's like nobody can do that. I think he just, he felt pressure to, still sing like
1987.
Like when he was in his, 20s or 30s or whatever. And, the voice just doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you think it's because 1987, I think it's almost sold over 10 million albums, Doug, in America at least. Do you think that's, he just can't get away from that because it was just so successful? Otherwise, the audiences won't come. Is there like a fear that not to go too far out of the wheelhouse?
I think David could do anything he wants. I think he was having a good time. When he resurrected the band and I was chosen to be involved in that, we were having a blast. It was great. And the music that we were doing was a little more blues based. I started playing slide on stuff and Reb was doing his thing. And then when I split, they kept doing more of that rock stuff. But man, David could do anything. I mean, he could. That's one of the great things about David is that he didn't put any constraints on himself or the band. If somebody had an idea and it was on a flute, you know, he would be like, "Yeah, great, let's do it." So, but you know, I think to me that early Whitesnake is, and his North Winds, that solo stuff he did prior was some of his best stuff, man.
Absolutely. I spoke to Red Beach about a month ago because they're doing the final tour of Winger, and
Yeah.
And he reminisced about the early days of Whitesnake, and he said that you were the John Sykes man in the band. And I think he was being a bit cheeky. He said, "Oh, he got the boring blues solos."
Yeah, he. I mean, if you call playing the solo to "Here I Go Again" boring, okay, but it's a great solo.
Yeah.
And Reb did it great, and he also he was really. I mean, Reb and I in the beginning we had a little bit of a competition, but then after so many years playing together, I just loved hearing what Reb was going to do every day. It was always fresh and off the cuff. You know, it was like he's the best. Reb's the best when we would lay down a nice bed and he would just do his thing, and it was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in the beginning, it was a little competition. I mean, I don't know. I basically stylistically probably lean closer towards what Sykes did than the John Sykes, than the Steve Vai kind of stuff. And Red was really good at that Steve Vai stuff. We were doing some of that, you know, we were doing like the Deeper the Love and whatnot, and Reb would just kill it. He would play it so beautifully. But it worked out pretty much 50-50 with Reb.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, of course, last year when I was sick, Reb, I was able to get Reb to come in and sit in, and he's such a great dude. You know, it was awesome that I could get him to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you influenced by Sykes in your guitar playing in any shape or form?
I mean, secondarily, yeah, I was influenced more by, the guys. Me and Sykes probably had very similar influences, like Randy Rose and Gary Moore, and the whole thing with Gary Moore was that aggressive staccato picking, and the same thing goes with when I was working with Dio. I mean, Vivian was also influenced by Gary Moore, obviously Irishman, and that kind of playing is just something that, like, I remember one time somebody said that, hey, you sound a little bit like John Sykes. And I actually didn't even really know John at that point. I didn't know his playing until the Slide It In album came out, and then somebody turned me on to somebody played me a little bit of Thin Lizzy, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I would lean more towards that style of guitar playing, but I mean, there's only one Sykes. He played so great, and like, we all have similar background and stuff, but he was definitely one of a kind, I think.
Did your paths ever cross? Did you ever get to meet John Sykes?
Oh yeah. I met John several times over the years, and he was always hilarious. Actually,
yeah, he's really a bit of a mystery man. How would you describe him? He's
a guitar player. He definitely was into the details of everything in his playing, and just as a person, I thought he was super fun to hang with. I mean, we had some good laughs, and everyone's got stories, so he would tell his stories. Obviously I spent more time with David, and I'd get David's stories too that were pretty funny about John, and all good stuff. Nothing, nothing bad. But there was not a rivalry, but those guys made some great music together, and then they just couldn't get it. They couldn't get it back together, and it was it was unfortunately a shame. In fact, when I left, he did reach out to Sykes to come, and he told John through a mutual friend that it would probably be a really good thing for the both of them to give it to the fans
as closure, one more time.
Yeah, they never did. They never played that '87 record.
No.
So that would have been a cool thing to do, but it just didn't. It was just they couldn't get on the same page, I guess. But and then John was always around, but he just wasn't doing that much. Like I'd see him in the grocery store, or I'd see him some random place. One time I saw him at a firing range, a gun firing range, and
right.
he was just keeping a low profile, but then he'd been sick, I guess, for a number of years, and nobody knew about it.
Yeah, but so highly respected in the rock or the hard rock world, wasn't it? It was a real shock that he sort of passed away. Hey, I want to talk about Gary Moore because he's interesting because he's a perfect example of a guitarist that was playing in a lot of hard rock. Then he shifted his career to blues. Did you find it difficult or challenging to change your style to this blues project?
Yeah, I did. I don't think for Gary it was that much of a challenge because I think Gary played it in his way. He did the blues in a heavier fashion. And what we were doing was definitely tearing it down to a more, traditional sounds and stuff like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, Gary, I love how he did it. He sounded like you could listen to, like you say, his rock stuff with Lizzie or his solo stuff, and you can listen to his blues stuff in the same session, and it's all goes together, and it just sounds like Gary. But this stuff we were doing, we wanted to break it down into more of a traditional sound, smaller tones, basically smaller amps and whatnot, and yeah. So,
did you have to deliberately restrain yourself? Like, if I'm doing a song, just less is more sort of approach?
Yeah, I did do that on not on. It wasn't like I had to restrain myself. I was just playing less because it didn't really feel right. It didn't feel right to be like shredding anything or. Actually, we don't even do that with the Dead Daisies rock stuff that much. But we definitely wanted to go for a less is more type of thing, as you mentioned, smaller sounds, more legitimate kind of real little amps like they used back then. And then that naturally led to less notes. But I'll tell you the truth, man, is like the pressure was because I wasn't like boned up or what do you say, like I wasn't rehearsed up on that stuff at all. That was everything you're hearing was off the cuff, just without like, I mean, of course I knew the songs, but we'd always jam that stuff with in a jam session situation with friends or whatever, and doesn't really matter what you do. But this was on, a situation where we were trying to take the songs into a different place, and I felt like we'll probably come back and revisit the guitars, and if we do something with it. We weren't even planning to do anything when we did it. And then I found out that the producer said, "Hey man, I like what you're doing. I like the stuff that's off the cuff. It's not thought out at all. It sounds like you, but it sounds like a different you, So I was like, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "Yeah, man, I think it sounds good as it is." That's kind of how recordings were made back then. You wouldn't sit there for weeks trying to perfect something. It was basically you just play it. But I would have loved to have had, to have like done some pre-production and then laid it down. It would have been different, but it is what it is. It's a moment in time that is, it's got a beauty to it, And like you said, John's just tailored for singing that stuff, man. It's like,
oh yeah, absolutely. I reckon he's having the tracks I've heard so far. He sounds like he's having a ball.
Yeah, he does, and a lot of that stuff too was first take. There was a couple that he didn't get. Yeah, he didn't get to a couple of them. I forget which ones. I think Thrill Is Gone he did later and some other stuff. But there was a lot of stuff like I'm Ready and Crossroads. He just sang it, you know, right on the spot. He printed out the lyrics and just did his own thing. Black Betty, same thing, you know. And then we kind of like with Black Betty, with Crossroads, with Thrill Is Gone, and a few others. We just did our own version of it. Like it was totally something different.
Hey,
Yeah.
in your musical career, you've had a lot of sliding door situations, like you auditioned for Kiss in '82, and recently I read that you got a call of interest to audition for Guns N' Roses. I've never heard that one. I'm
Yeah.
interested to know the story. How did you get the Dio gig?
So so I had a band called Lion that was really those were my friends, my band. That was the thing we were meant to. We wanted to get a record deal and be an original band. You know, there had been lots of auditions that came up from different gigs, and I never went for anything. And eventually we were kind of stuck. Lion was stuck, and a friend of mine, Grover Jackson from Jackson Guitars, called me and says, "Hey man, Dio's looking for a guitar player. It's about time you get out there." And I was like, "I don't know, man. I'm really hoping we can get ourselves sorted out and get on a good record company and blah blah blah." And he's like, "Well, I think it'd be worth checking out, and just if you send me a tape and I'll pass it off to Wendy Dio." And I made this little 4-track cassette recording in my apartment and sent it to him, and Wendy called back, and I was just like, she goes, Ronnie wants to meet you and play and all that stuff. This was in 1990. And it felt really awkward we just played one song. We went to the pub, we hung out for a minute, and then Ronnie was like, "I want you in the band." And I was kind of taken aback a little bit because I wasn't prepared for that, for one. And I also felt really guilty, like about, I didn't tell my buddies. I felt like I was cheating, and I never used that scenario, that analogy before, but that's really what it felt like. I just felt guilty, and so I just basically just kind of passed on it. And 10 years later, I was doing a session with Jimmy Bane, and he goes, "Hey man, we're looking for a guitar player again. What do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then it was about 6 or 8 months before, it was a long time. I was talking to Jimmy, and he kept saying, "Yeah, we're going to call you. We're going to call you." And then they never did. And I was like, it's payback. They're paying me back for that I didn't join the first time. And
Yep.
finally it was around Christmas. It was coming into Christmas in 2001. And I called Jimmy. I go, "Dude, what the fuck is going on? You keep telling me." And it's like, "I got other things I'm looking at doing. If you're not going to," he goes, "Okay, let me talk to Ronnie. I'll call you back." And he goes, "Okay, December 26th, let's meet up with Ronnie at the pub." Again, at the pub, not the same pub, but another one. But so the three of us show up at the pub, and we're having a beer in the daytime. And then, he goes, "Well, I was thinking about having you play on a couple of songs on the album." And I just was looking at Jimmy like, what are you talking about? Playing a couple of songs? I go, "Ronnie, I want to join the band. That's what I'm here to do. I want to play on the whole record. I want to do everything." And he's like, "Okay, you start tomorrow." And that's what we did. I don't know if you caught all that, because it looked like it froze up.
No. I caught all the audio. That's
okay,
cool.
So basically he goes, "Okay, start tomorrow." And so December 27th, 2001, 2001, I went in the studio for the first day, and it was a blast. And
Yes.
I a lot of ways, and I compare that Dio time with the Daisies, because the Daisies is really like a family. It's like everyone's deep into everybody else's. We're all working together. Everyone's doing something to be productive together. And if I can't figure it out, you can figure it out. And if you can't, then Michael Devin or John or whoever, David will figure it out. So it really feels like a family in the Daisies. And that was the first time since I had been in my original band Lion, that it felt like a family, being in Dio. So
Killing the Dragon, some of the songs had already been written by Jimmy Bane and the previous guitarist Craig Goldie. Were you given complete freedom to lay the guitar tracks in the way you wanted, or was Ronnie very prescriptive? It had to be done in a certain way.
no, he liked what I was doing. I was just kind of this. There was some scratch guitar stuff that was like, it wasn't finished. It was like, when you're recording drums, you're kind of doing scratch guitar to keep everything moving. And so there was an outline of some of the stuff, but I definitely pumped it up in my own way. It was really cool the way that Greg did it, but I just wanted to do it my way, and Ronnie liked it. He was all for it. In fact, that was a time, it was a transitional time right there, because guitar had kind of taken a back seat for a while. Lead guitar especially had taken a back seat to, I mean, I remember it was like some songs he was like, no, it doesn't need a solo. And in the 80s and the 70s, he was always a solo, and then in the 90s, it was like, no solo. We don't need it. Just too much. Why do a solo? So then at the end of, the 90s and the 2000s, all these bands started coming back, the Scorpions and Deep Purple and blah, blah, blah. And Ronnie, I think he was making a record, and he said to me, he goes, I want to make it like kind of like a Holy Diver type of sound production and stuff.
That's what I was about to say. It's very much the classic Dio sound, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we had some, I think there was probably like 75% of that album, the songs were there, and then there was like a couple that I think they had written, and they were there, so we did them. But it was a great comeback album for Ronnie, and he was really excited about it, and the tour was great. We had some really big tours, and we toured basically. We rehearsed for 6 weeks prior to starting in May, and then we toured the entire time till Christmas in 2002. And the band, so the band from gig one, the band was really tight. It was like the band was, we were ready.
You had some rock soldiers in that band. Like, what was it like being in a band with Jimmy Bane and Simon Wright?
Great. It was great.
Jimmy's a character, isn't he?
He was, yeah. God bless him. He absolutely was a super talented songwriter and an amazing bass player. His feel was insane, and Jimmy was known for partaking in a lot of the party that was going around him all the time. But when it came to laying down bass, it didn't matter what state he was in. He was solid, man.
Yeah. Did you see a lot of that backstage? Did you see a lot of the edgy Jimmy partaking on the party side, or not really?
I mean, we definitely we were drinking. I mean, we weren't, compared to some people, it wasn't that much, but we were drinking a lot of beers and smoking hash in the tour bus and just having a blast. But Jimmy, he dabbled with some other stuff as well, and that's, I think, what ended up getting the best of him. But it's weird, man. You never want to. I look at people who you meet and you go, they go, I've never taken any drugs whatsoever, and it's like, I'm like, that's amazing. I wish I could say that. That's so. It's cool because there's no reason to do that. But I got to say that some of those guys that were big partiers, these musicians that we lost early, like John Bonham and Jim Morrison and Hendrix and all these guys, and Bon Scott. I mean, they were all bigger than life, and they might not have been that way if they were totally sober all the time. I don't know, but Jimmy definitely was a handful. He was a fun guy to hang out with, and he would just make you laugh your ass off. And And like I say, he was a great writer. He could take something. We did something in this room for that album. We did a couple of songs together because the album didn't have 10 songs. And I had a couple of riffs. I had an outline of what it could do. And Jimmy was really quick to go, okay, no, that's cool. Hey, you know, let's do this or let's do that. And so we put these two songs together for Ronnie very quickly, basically in like one sitting. And then they were on the album. So
I read a lot about your experiences with bands being overly positive. I don't read a lot of negative, experiences that you've had. Do you buy the argument that sometimes creative tension is good for music? A lot of good records come out of bands that can't stand each other.
I mean, that's a bit of a drag. I've never been in a situation where I couldn't stand somebody. That would be difficult, but definitely, me and David Coverdale it was a great relationship as friends, and he really, like he gave me carte blanche to do, to come up with whatever I wanted. And I spent a lot of time working on it. And there was some stuff that, that I would have had go a different way, but he was the boss, so, but like I'd fight for stuff. If I really believed in it, I'd really fight for it and try to, and he would too, if I was like flippant about something and said, oh, I don't know about that, he'd be like, no, you need to listen to this again and take it home with you and work on it, because it's going to be really great. But yeah, I mean, you always have rubs. There was a couple of times where David and I had a couple of rough days. Ronnie and I had one or two. But the respect has got to be there. It can't be one-sided, it's got to be like, basically telling somebody the truth is sometimes difficult, especially when it's your boss.
Yeah.
But, it's important to be honest and pick your battles of what you want to do. Even with Lion, the singer, and I would rub each other sometimes, but I love the guy, and I've been blessed to work with so many great singers, with Glenn Hughes and John and David and Ronnie. I mean, there's just like a lot of people that I've been really lucky to work with, and you always have the little rubs sometimes, but
but not consistent, because I never hear real negative stories about your experiences. No separate limos for Doug and, or any bands that you've been in. It seems to be all very much like a family, like the Dead Daisies,
Yeah. I mean, the Daisies is definitely a thing where everybody checks their ego. You don't come into a situation with guys like, David Lowe and John Corabi and have an attitude, it's like, it wouldn't work. You got to come in.
How's the camper van going with Corabi? Does he drive you guys around? I did an interview with him and he was in the camper van.
His tour bus?
I think so.
It's a full-on bus. That thing is amazing. It's like, man, that thing is actually more luxurious than a real tour bus. And it's big. It's a double axle. It's got like, the 6 wheels on the back, like a real tour bus. And it's got a big ass bed in the back, and it's really nice, and it slides out. It gets giant. It's really fun, and he's funny, man. He's just trucking, he's tooling along, driving and listening to sports radio. That reminds me a lot of Ronnie, because Ronnie used to always listen to sports radio too. You'd go to his house, and Ronnie lived in virtually a castle in Los Angeles. It did not match the rest of the neighborhood. In fact, people were probably put off by his house because it looked like, a medieval, like there would be a drawbridge and stuff like that. And you go up into this place, and you go into these spiral stairs to go up into the kitchen, and there's Ronnie listening to, like, the sports radio about his football team or whatever. And it was just funny. And there's John Corabi, the famous lead singer, driving the bus, listening to the radio, sports radio. It's funny.
Yeah. So you're in Whitesnake for a while. What's your proudest musical achievement with Whitesnake? Do you have a personal favorite song where you think this is the Whitesnake for you?
I would say probably, I mean, some of the stuff like the bluesier stuff that I really like, lay down your love and good to be bad. And then the last song that we wrote together was Forevermore. That'd probably be my favorite one. Because we were done writing for the Forevermore record, and David was like, okay, we've got to, I was up at his place at that point. We'd go back and forth. He'd come here, I'd go there, and we'd always come out of the session. It would be like a week-long session, full on. We'd come out with a couple song ideas or demos. And the last time I went up to his place, we got 2 songs done, or one song, whatever it was. And he's like, okay, we're done. And I had Forevermore, basically all the parts were there. I just didn't have the arrangement figured out yet, but I knew it was going to be cool. And he goes, all right, we're done. I go, I got one more thing. He goes, man, we're done, Doug. I got to start writing lyrics. I can't keep working on music with you. It's like, it's got to be over because I'm tired. We gotta kill the record. Don't worry about it. And I go, this DC, would you please tomorrow? He goes, I said, would you please tomorrow? Or I said, would you please just listen to this idea fresh, just with an open heart and open mind? And he got pissed. He was like, what do you mean? I always listen to everything with an open heart and open mind. What are you talking about? And he was really upset. And I go, okay, we'll see what happens. I didn't press it. We ended up, David at that time was really into drinking high-end whiskey. And he poured us both a whiskey, and we sat down and we used to watch Westerns every night. We watched, not hundreds, but we watched dozens of Westerns together. And we're drinking whiskey, watching a Western, having a great night. And I was just like, man, too bad about that song. And then the next morning, first thing after we got some coffee, he's like, all right, play us what you got. And I played it for him, and he immediately had a great melody for it, basically virtually the exact melody that's on the record. And then a week later, he goes, I love the song. It's going to be the title track of the album, called Forevermore. And I was like, perfect, So that was the last song we worked on together, original music. So that, I would say that's my favorite.
Well, funny thing is, I asked Reb, and he cited that song as a high point in his time in Whitesnake. He loves that song. So there you go.
That's cool. Yeah, Reb, Reb was always trying to get involved in the songwriting, and it just, for whatever reason, he was not locked out. He felt like he was getting locked out, but he wasn't on the same page with what David was doing yet. Later, I think he got more. After I split, I think I was taking up too much room, maybe, but he would just send up music that maybe it was just good ideas that he had maybe written it for somebody else and it didn't get used. So then he thought, well, hey, this is a good idea. And when you present something to somebody like David or Ronnie, one of those guys, you got to present it at the right time in the right way. And if I had said to him, hey, I never did have anything that I'd written for Ronnie, but if I had said to David, hey, I got this riff, and Ronnie, I wrote it for Ronnie, but we never did it, or Ronnie, he didn't get it, or whatever. But let's work on it. It's not the way you sell your idea.
Yeah.
The way to do it is to go, hey, I got something that I really like, I feel strongly about, and check it out, see what you think. And there's no pressure. There was, with me and David, I never pressured him about a song. If he was into it, he would let me know. And if he wasn't, he would just kind of leave it alone. He would be like, it's cool, but let's work on this one, Douglas. Let's work on something, the other one that you have, or whatever. So that's what we would do. It was a very free-flowing relationship, and 99% of the time we were on the same page going.
Makes it easy if you're on the 99%.
Yeah, I mean, he taught me so much. I learned a lot about performance from Ronnie, not as much about, I was only involved in 2 songs writing with Ronnie, or 2 or 3 songs. But with David, I co-wrote 30 songs with him. So when you
Absolutely.
look at, that amount of time that you spend with somebody, you're going to definitely learn things. And David was like, always, he was like, if you got a hook, the hook of whatever it is, musically or melodically or lyrically or whatever, you want to repeat that hook as many times as you can, because people want to hear it again. Or maybe you want to repeat it just enough, and then you want to leave them wanting more. But like, it's all about treating the hook responsibly.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot about stuff like that. And then he was like, with Jimmy Page, we used to do this. We'd take all these amps and set them up, and then we'd use this amp for this sound and this amp for this sound. And of course, was familiar with that, but I had never been in a situation where I could afford to do that. So that was really fun with Whitesnake.
We spoke last year that I heard in the traps that David was wanting to do a finale Whitesnake album and get members past and present. Have you got any update? Have you heard from David lately?
Not really. I mean, I get the various texts once in a while, like, but not really. I haven't spoken to him. I spoke to him maybe. I mean, we were texting during the cancer stuff.
Yep.
But I haven't really spoken to him since last year.
Yeah.
He's busy. He's doing all these repackaging, all this stuff he's doing. And he's just keeping busy, like a busy boy. He's just doing his thing and still repackaging and remixing stuff. And I know he's got a place in Malibu, which is not too far from me, but I haven't been invited over yet.
Yeah, Rep seems to think that he might do maybe a finale in Vegas or a residency. Would you be, if you were invited, you'd be up for it? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't presume anything. If he invited me, I'd consider it. I'd obviously, my priority is the Dead
Daisies, of course.
But I love the history that I had with David, and I would do. If it was possible, I would do it for sure. I love the guy. He's my big brother. So we'll
absolutely.
see. We'll see if that happens. I don't know. I've heard the same thing, and I think it would be really cool. A lot of people would absolutely go to Vegas to see David play.
Yeah.
If he had, some members from the past, that would be even, that would be a bonus. I remember when, before Bernie Marsden died, they weren't on speaking terms for a long time, and I don't know what happened, but they weren't really talking. And one day, we talked about, he's like, I love my band that I have now with you guys. And when we talk about the old bands, sometimes he'd be like, yeah, those guys were great, but I love this band. And then we bumped into Bernie in an airport somewhere, and they had a really nice conversation, and that opened the door to Bernie and David doing Trouble, and also having him come on stage with us in various places periodically. So you never know, but I would love for David to do that with or without me. I would love it for his fans, because Vegas is now the hot spot. Everyone wants to go there. It's kind of centrally located to the world almost.
It's the entertainment capital of the world. That's where they're doing it. It does make sense. But look, I think it's inconceivable that he wouldn't do a finale without you, Doug, because you're so much a part of the final couple of chapters of Whitesnake. And
that's cool. I look at it like I was blessed to work with him and have that opportunity, and him and Ronnie put me out there. David continued putting me out there, and and I wouldn't be in the Daisies had it not been for Coverdale. So I'm
absolutely.
grateful for that.
let's wrap this up. We've got to talk about Dead Daisies. So
Yeah.
you guys are touring Europe and the UK this year. What can audiences expect from these shows? A mix of the old and the new?
Yeah, it's a best of that we're doing. You know, I mean, we have this new album, Looking for Trouble, is getting super attention, great, getting really good attention, and people are happy with it and surprised. And so we're definitely going to be doing some of that stuff. But there's also, you know, like David Coverdale would say, they would lynch me if I didn't do Still of the Night. You know, somebody, I forget who it was. It was like, do we have to do Still of the Night? What? Are you kidding me? They would kill us. We wouldn't leave the venue alive, you know. So there's a few Dead Daisy songs that are like that too. Like people would be upset if we didn't do them, but it's gonna be a great night. I mean, look, the thing of it is John Corabi puts on it's a party. It's a party scenario, and he's such a great front man.
He is.
He's one of the greats, you know, and the band is it's solid, you know. So we have a great time. People are singing along. We're playing, you know, our songs that they love. We're playing a couple of covers that we've put our stamp on that actually are kind of like Midnight Moses is actually more of a Daisy song than a Alex Harvey song in a sense, because the Daisies probably made it. I mean, this is before my time. I'm just giving you my 2 cents, but I think the Daisies put their stamp on that song in a way that makes it pretty popular.
What do you notice the differences between the European crowds and the American crowds in regards to the reaction to your material?
European crowds are younger. I think, sorry about that. Yeah, European crowds there's a definite undercurrent of younger people that love this kind of music. They love
classic rock.
Yeah. And so the crowds are definitely, they're a little bigger and they're a little louder maybe, but you know, there's some great fans in the US it's just a little more spread out, you know. But we have a blast. We have a blast when we play the US, but I mean, Europe is really our kind of second home. We really need to get down. We need to get down under with me.
That's my next question, mate. You know, it's been a while. I was scratching my head because I know Dead Daisy supported Kiss, and then I can't recall after that. I know Corabi's been to Australia a couple of times, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, it would be good. It's time to do it. I think you never know. Maybe we'll do a blues night in Sydney at the Opera House.
Well, there you go. Promoters, if you're listening.
That would be a thing.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I would love to get there. We've only been there once in my life with Whitesnake, and man, it's such an amazing place. It's so, you know, it's pretty cool that I work with a bunch of Aussies because I get to hear and get to feel like I'm part of that culture a little bit, you know. And it really is. It's a unique place in the same way that you know, Japan is very unique to itself and the rest of the world, and Australia is like that. And so,
are you guys doing a Japan tour? Because it's a dog leg. That's there you go, Japan.
I know. No, I don't know yet. We got offers, but we also have scheduling things that are, you know, basically we've got offers, but they need to work into the schedule that we have. Also, David's got his schedule too that he's doing with his other business. So we're doing, you know, we're going to get, look, everybody wants us. All of our friends want us to come down under, and it's definitely a priority. So we just need to make that happen.
Fantastic. Well, Doug, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I'm glad that the mobile phone lasted, because last time we did a show, it conked out. But I'm glad that I got to ask you all those questions, and I always look forward to seeing what you're putting down. Hopefully, I'd like to see you know, maybe some solo albums in the future, or whatever you're going to do.
You never know. I mean, I'm always dabbling in stuff. You know, I'm in my studio. It's like a dream come true to be here, and I just, you know, I'm always working on a few things for the Daisies, and
can you point the camera across to the rest of the studio just to show the folks? I was just
so
just look at the marsh.
I got my I got my effects rack over here that has Neve stuff in it and some Studer gear and whatnot. And then I have this new Black Star stuff that is a signature amp. We started using Black Star on tour, and I loved it so much they decided to have me do a signature amp, and it's called the Ruby. It's ruby red, and it sounds incredible. It's really I don't know if you can hear it.
That's not coming out.
So I just put together a little pedal board right here that I was just messing around with these pedals, and I got, a bunch of amps. I was testing out this Black Star amp with my buddy who's a producer for a lot of big albums and stuff, and he had probably 50 amps in his studio, and so I decided the Ruby amp stood right up. It was great. But then he was like, they're all different. So I decided to start bringing out amps from storage and trying different stuff. And I just been kind of locked into a nerdy gear mode right now. So that's why I have all this stuff. It's a bit of a mess, but I love it.
Fantastic. Well, Doug, it's always been a pleasure to talk to you. Love to talk to you again in the future, and looking forward to seeing what the Dead Daisies, hopefully they do to Australia. And the album comes out in a couple of weeks. Folks, please do yourself a favor and catch up with the album.
All right. Sounds good, man. That sounds good. Thank you so much, Peter. Thanks to everybody for checking it out. And I really appreciate all the good messages, well wishes, and prayers and stuff. I like I said in the beginning, it kind of it doesn't even feel real that I'm a cancer survivor. It doesn't. That's just can't even comprehend it. But thanks to everybody. It really made it. When I was going through it, it really made a big difference.
Absolutely. Good to see you, mate. All right. All the best. Cheers.
Thanks, brother. All right. See you, Peter.
Yeah. Bye.